My name is Ellen Polly. Brad and I started talking, and we would have different kinds of conversations about his children, my daughters, and we came on the topic of God one time, and he really opened up and just said, I don't really know where I stand with that. I don't really believe in religion. And one of the things that I remember telling him was, I'm not going to argue with you about what you believe, because what I have is an experience.
Being an atheist is being very stern, very grounded in a belief that is basically an absence of belief, okay? It's something that you're sitting there, but it's not really supporting you. You're just sitting there kind of resting your laurels on that stone on the ground, and you're just saying, okay, well, I believe this and I don't believe anything else you say.
I invited him to come to church, and my prayer for him, and I specifically told him, my prayer for you is that you experience the love of God.
It kind of intrigued me a little bit, but I also had my reservations. I had my a little bit of reservations about the church. But she just started talking about, she goes to the church and she actually sings, and I was like, oh wow, you're actually part of the choir. And then it really surprised me when I went to the church, and I was like, wait, she's not part of the choir, she's like on the front line, she's part of the main team up here.
I think I was singing that Sunday, and he was there at church, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's gonna think I'm weird, hands up in the air. I'm just worshiping and just, I'm being who I am.
So that was really cool to see her up there and singing, really get into it. And I'm a really huge fan of music, so that was something that kind of really brought us both together, especially at Grace Church, because they're really huge with music.
When at first I sat down next to Brad and I asked him what happened, Lord, are you okay? He's got tears, and he just said, I got the experience. And I could really sense his heart was so tender and full of God's love.
But there are going to be times in your life that, and every person has this in their life, there's going to be times in your life that you're going to need faith. And even the person who doesn't believe is going to understand. And being an atheist, that's something I never really had. It was always kind of this void. If a very traumatic event, almost like when my parents-in-law got taken, that was a challenge because I wasn't really all in at that point. I was still kind of had my reservations about the belief systems and not really understanding it, but that was kind of another doorway. And whether it was meant to be that way or not, it was something that happened, and it happens to a lot of people. Trauma and tragedy happens to us. It's part of life. But being an atheist, it's a challenge to deal with those kind of things because you have just this very hard mindset about it, about just saying, well, it just happened and I just have to deal with it. For an atheist, if you don't believe in that, then how exactly do you believe in love? Do you believe in love? That's something you can't see. It's not tangible. It's something you can't put your hand on, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
So as our friendship began to grow, he would send me text messages, and like I said, he was really, really such a sweet, kind, nice guy, and I remember thinking, I gotta find him a girl, because he is the perfect guy. And that just resonated with me, and I thought, oh, well, what if he's my perfect guy? We got married last October. Pastor Greg married us, and then we had a wedding in North Carolina with our family and friends. And it's just been a God thing. So it hasn't just been Brad's life that's been impacted, it's been the whole family. It was just one invitation, but it has affected so many different lives. And God is faithful, is all I can say.
I want to start off first by welcoming all of our campuses, please. Temple Terrace, Ybor, Waters Avenue, South Tampa, everyone here at Van Dyke, glad you're with us. Those online or on the app, wherever you are, we are glad that you are with us, and we hope next weekend you're going to catch one of our 17 Easter services all over Tampa Bay. Surely one of those you can make. Now, this is an exciting time. We have these names all over the stages and the walls of our campuses, and those names are friends and family that people are praying for, people who don't have a relationship with Christ, and we're praying that they do. And it's an exciting time. I'll tell you, when you go from actually just wishing someone would find Jesus to actively praying for them, jotting that name down, praying for them every day, God does a work in you. He rekindles a certain fire in you. He builds up a passion in you that maybe wasn't there. He builds a hunger to see people far from God experience His love and His grace. And what I'm going to do today is I really want to have kind of an informal conversation with you, carrying on what we've been talking about in this series, about how do you have conversations about spiritual things with people who maybe aren't Christians and those kind of things. We want to see people come to faith. I do believe that, but sometimes we have this barrier, and that barrier is a simple belief that people are reluctant to have spiritual conversations. We genuinely believe that people don't want to talk about this, those kind of things, but I'm just going to tell you that is not true. That is not true at all. You can even see from the video that we just watched that some of those conversations can be life-changing moments for someone, but the belief that people don't want to have these kind of conversations is just simply not true. In fact, there's times that I wish it was true. Because I'll give you an example of something. I'll be on a plane, and I'm tired, and I'm sitting next to someone, and I don't know who this person is. Maybe they know God, maybe they don't. I don't know. And I know I'm supposed to be the light of the world or whatever, but my light is a little tired, and my light is a little dim. So I'm not going to have a conversation going on, even though I may be in the middle seat, which is the worst. I'm going to put my headphones on, and I'm ready to lift off. So I get them on. I got my plane playlist going. Tilt my head back, eyes closed, and all of a sudden, person next to me. So what's your name? Oh, hi, I'm Matt. Hi, nice to meet you. All right, headphones back on. Head tilted back, eyes closed. So what do you do? Okay, headphones off. Now I gotta be careful how I answer this question. Because I don't want to have a spiritual conversation right now. I want to take a nap. So I gotta be very careful. So here's how you do this for me. I say, I'm a speaker. All right, headphones back on, head tilted. So where do you speak? Just go ahead and roll these bad boys up. I speak at a church. I'm actually a pastor. Oh, what church? Grace Family Church. What kind of church is that? It's a good one. And then he goes, well, it's funny because I have some issues with the whole God thing, and I've been wanting to have this conversation, and I just know, I have issues too. Like, I can't sleep on a plane. Like, I don't know who has this belief that people don't want to have spiritual conversations, because that's not true. And so what I do is I have to get rid of my selfish self there in that moment, and then I just lean over and I just lean into that spiritual conversation. Well, tell me, what have you been thinking? And we have that conversation. The thing is, in this day and time, in a world as uncertain as it is right now, with people with all kinds of stresses and fears and anxieties that they didn't have 10 years ago, the truth is simply this: people are hungry to have real conversations with real people about the reality of God. They want to have conversations with actual sinners, not those religious people like, well, I don't know about sin. I don't want to have a conversation with that person. We want to have conversations with real people. They don't want to be yelled at. They don't want the bathroom, stall kicked in and a book thrown in their face. Nobody wants that kind of thing. They don't want to be blown off. But they do, and I get this. You go, well, I don't know if this person's going to have an open mind toward talking about God. I don't know if they're going to have an open heart toward this. They may not. But Most everybody is open to a conversation. You know, I don't know if their heart's ready. I don't know if their mind's ready, but their mouth is pretty ready because they want to have that conversation. They want to talk about it. And the thing is that last week, Pastor Craig gave some really, really good pointers about those conversations, because the truth is we'll get worried that we're going to get rejected, that we're going to offend someone, that we're not good enough, that we don't know enough. And if you didn't hear that message, I would highly encourage you to go back last week. You need to hear that. That's some great stuff. But spiritual conversations can get real frustrating. People will push on you. They will press you. They will challenge you. And that's not a bad thing. I can't recall a conversation I've had about God where someone's just like, yes, I fully accept everything you're saying. That's usually not happening. People press, people push, and that's a good thing. But let me give you a little piece of advice from Colossians here. Paul wrote this to the Colossians. Colossians 4 says this. It says, live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. And the thing he says is something that he goes, the right response is for you in those conversations when people press, when people push, be gracious. Show grace. Extend God's love, extend God's grace in those circumstances. Don't get out your Bible and be like, oh, I'm getting my Bible out. It's on now. You know what I think? And now we're going to start Googling the answers to each other's questions and like just getting in this dumb debate that goes nowhere. Here's the thing, guys. I want you to hear this. This is what Paul, I believe, is really saying, is that people listen when we explain Jesus, but they respond when they experience Jesus. When they actually experience grace. When they actually experience someone being gracious, someone showing them love, someone encouraging them, someone who can take it and say, hey, I'm not going to dish it back. I'm just going to listen. I want to hear your story. I get what you're saying. I'm not offended by everything. I'm not offended by any opinion that's not mine. Just being gracious. The question is, are they experiencing grace in that conversation? Talking about Jesus is one thing. Being like Jesus is better. So just remember that when you're in those conversations. And the good news is anyone can do that. You don't have to have a theology degree. You don't have to be a winner on the debate team. Anyone can pray for someone genuinely. Anyone can genuinely love someone that they disagree with. Anyone cannot be a jerk and be Jesus to someone. It's quite possible. And that's the thing is we have to remember is that we need to extend grace and be gracious because that is the right response in that conversation. But I want to show you something else because we all know that this conversation, spiritual conversations about God, the Bible, and Christianity and all these things can get real tricky. And they can get tense because two things are going on that you're going to run up against. Number one, we don't really understand everything about the Bible. Someone's going to press in on that. And then number two, we don't know why God allows certain things to happen in the world or in people's lives. And you're going to get questions about that. The truth is, if someone looks you in the face and says this, well, if God loves me, why did he let my mom die? You can't answer with, well, he works everything out for the good of those who let Romans. No, that's not an answer to that question. You got to honestly sit and realize really quickly, guys, that I don't care what anyone says, this is not an intellectual conversation. It never has been. It's an emotional conversation. It's not about facts and history. It may start there, but it never ends there. It's a conversation about pain. It's a conversation about our own stories. It's a conversation about situations that neither person fully understands. And you got to understand that. And let me point to something because I want to tell you this story because I want to show you at the end of the story there's a really good point for that. But I want you to keep this thing in mind. So I'm going to set up this story here, and I'm going to start this in John 9. This is a story about Jesus and a blind man. And at the very end of the story, there's some really good things. But let me set up what happens here. So starting off there, you can see in your bulletin, it says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the task assigned us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I'm here in the world, I am the light of the world. Now, I want to highlight a couple of things here. This is more to set the story, but there's a couple of interesting things that Jesus says there I just want to point out. So Jesus and his disciples see a man born blind, and the disciples ask the natural what happened. So this guy's born blind, so whose fault is that? Is it his fault? Is it his parents' fault? Like, why is he paying for this? Whose sins is he paying for? And Jesus kind of looks at him, he goes, that's not what happened. But this is a question that comes up all the time because the disciples see something horrible and they say, why did this happen? That is a question when you have spiritual conversations you will hear a lot. Well, tell me why this happened. Tell me why that happened. This horrible incident happened to me. This circumstance happened to me. Well, why did it happen? Is it something that I did? Is it something that someone else did? Why did I go through this? And Jesus responds with this really interesting answer. And it doesn't really answer their question, but it more points out something else. And he tells them, sometimes things happen so that the power of God can be seen. Some things in this life are so dark, so complex, so immovable, that when it changes, it gets everyone's attention because they know that it had nothing to do with that person. It wasn't some self-help book. It wasn't some doctor. It wasn't anything. It wants one response only. Only God could have done that. There are certain dynamics and people and events and things that change in a person's life that will even make an atheist look up and go, whoa. It could only be God. But Jesus points out something else that I think plays into this conversation. He says that while we're in the world, we're the light of the world. We have to carry out what God wants us to do, he says, because the night is coming. And I think we all know what he means by the night is coming. And to me, I'll think about that and I think, you know what? One day, everybody is going to close their eyes. And when they reopen them, they're going to see the Lord Jesus Christ. My hope is that when you stand before the Lord, that you know that you did what he called you to do. That when the question comes, that you know, I've done everything I can do. I did what you wanted me to do. Because when the night came, you know that I worked during the day. I hope that that's what we did. I mean, when you remember the big picture, the fact is this: we have a limited amount of time on this earth to share God's love with people. Now, I'm not saying you need to rush out the door right now and go yell at everybody you can and go running down your street screaming at all your neighbors. But what I am saying is this: there is a limited amount of time that we get to do this. And when you keep that in mind, a nap on a plane really doesn't matter. When you keep that in mind, an inconvenience doesn't matter because you realize that the bigger picture is at play. Now, let me tell you what happened to this blind man. This is really interesting. So Jesus heals this blind man, and people are shocked. I mean, imagine that, seeing a person who was born blind and now they can see for the first time. So the buzz gets out. The city is buzzing about this. This is an incredible thing that's been done. This is an only God thing. So what happens is the religious leaders who are very opposed to Jesus bring this man in to be interrogated. And basically they question him and they ask him, like, what happened? And the blind man says, well, Jesus healed me. And this is a dilemma because the religious leaders did not believe in Jesus, but they also could not explain what happened. A lot of folks you're going to have conversations with are going to be in that boat. I don't believe what you say, but I can explain what's happened to you. So what happens is they bring in a witness to verify that this guy was even born blind in the first place. Like maybe this has been a 40-year scam. I don't know. So they bring in his parents. His parents are scared to death because they're afraid to talk about Jesus to the religious leaders. They don't want something bad to happen to them. So they just say, was he born blind? Yes. And ask for questions about Jesus. The parents point at the son and go, he is old enough to answer for himself. Thanks, Mom and Dad. So we pick back up in verse 24 there in your bulletin there. It says, for the second time, the religious leaders called in the man who had been blind, and they told him, God should get the glory for this because we know this man Jesus is a sinner. I don't know whether he's a sinner, the man replied, but I know this. I was blind, and now I can see. That's a pretty powerful statement. I want to look at what he says here because there's some good stuff in there for us. It gets heated. The religious leaders point blank challenge him, and they say, listen, this Jesus is not who you say he is. He's not who he says he is, and what you say happened didn't happen. Sometimes you're going to be in conversations where that's going to happen. Nope, Jesus is not who you say. Nope, that's not right. And what happened to you did not happen. That's a myth. That didn't happen. Right? And so these things are going to happen. And the thing is that then you get the challenges of Christianity in general, because this is when the questions get really heated, right? Well, let me tell you, where do the dinosaurs fit into this? And how did God let the Holocaust happen? How do you explain that? And why does this verse say this, but this verse says that? Riddle me this, Christian. If a tree falls in the woods and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? And we get challenged and we get pushed because then we say, this is who Jesus is, this is what he's done in my life. And that's when the weapons come out. That's when people kind of play dirty sometimes. That's when people get rough. The conversation gets a little heated. And that's okay. Listen, I get it, but I want to show you two parts of the blind man's response that you need to know. The first part that he said is, I don't know. I don't know if he's a sinner. I don't know. That's a smart thing to say for smart people. Because sometimes you start to hypothetically make it up. Well, I think unicorns weren't allowed on the ark. Nope. You made that up. And now we're in fairy tale land when it comes to talking about the Bible. Listen to me. When you don't know, here's a great response for that. I don't know. That's a good question, because let me just be honest with you. If someone has to know everything to have a relationship with God, you can forget about it. Because let me tell you something. God will not fit in anyone's box, and his ways cannot be understood. He is wild and untamed, and if you don't like that, sorry, that's just the way that he is. He's a box basher. He doesn't care about your nice, tidy box. He doesn't care about any of that. He is God. And his ways are higher than our ways. And the truth is, guys, I've been working in the ministry for 19 years. And when it comes to questions that people ask, like, well, how can God be everywhere at once? How can Jesus be God and man at the same time? How can God be in control, yet I have free will? When is the end of the world going to happen? Yeah, 19 years later, yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I really don't. And the thing is, listen, here's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that I can say I don't know, but I'm even more grateful that God is bigger than my brain. Because here's the deal. If he wasn't, we'd all be in trouble. He couldn't do a lot. I can say that. So it is okay to say I don't know on some of these questions, because you don't. But let me point to the second part of his answer, because the second part is where it comes in. He says, but I know this. I don't know the answer to your question, but I know this. I was blind, and now I can see. Here's the deal. The religious leaders could challenge his assessment and his knowledge of Jesus, but they could not challenge the fact that he is healed, and Jesus did it. See, we want to get in this whole thing about, well, where did Jesus come from, and where does he get his clothes, and what's his, how long's his beard? Well, here's the bottom line. I don't know about any of that stuff, but I can see. And nobody that we know can do that, and Jesus did that. And so these religious leaders are just lit. I don't know what to do. They're like, I don't know how. And here's the thing, guys. Sometimes it's going to come down to this. I don't know how, and I don't know everything about Jesus, but let me tell you a fact, and one thing that I do know is that I have been changed by Jesus. And you can't take that away from me. Here's the thing. People can challenge your knowledge of God, but they can't challenge your experience of God. They can challenge how much you know about the Bible. They can challenge how much you know about all these kind of things and how much you know, how many Bible facts you know. But they can't change the fact that you were this person and now you're not. And nobody knows what to do with that. Knowing everything is not important. Knowing one thing is very important. God has changed my life. I can't explain it. I don't understand how he did it, but I know this. I'm a new person because of Jesus Christ. And that's the truth. The most powerful tool you have in this conversation, the most powerful tool you have is your story. It's just to say, listen, I don't know all the facts and figures, but here's what happened to me. This is it. God has changed my life. And don't ever be afraid to tell your story. Don't shout it at people, but share it with people. Don't be afraid to go, look, let me just tell you what happened. This is my life story. This is where I'm at. This is why I believe. Because here's the deal. People, you can explain your story, but no one can deny your story. No one can deny what God has done in your life. You can't take that away. Now, let me run down a side road here, something that I really want to share with you guys because I really believe this is part of it. People need to hear your story, but please don't hide from those people who need to hear your story. Something happens when a person comes to faith and they're all fired up and then they go in hiding mode. And they live in a Christian bunker for the rest of their life. And they live in a Christian world where they surround themselves with Christians and Christian music, and they even have Bible verses on their toenail clippers. And it just gets weird. It just gets weird. Here's the thing. They believe that, well, I only hang out with the people in my Bible study because that is what God wants me to do. You know why I don't get out in the world? You know why I don't have any friends that don't know Christ? Here's the deal. Because I am not going to contaminate myself with a world that is sick. I used to be there, but I don't go back there. And let me tell you, I keep myself away from that. I live in a Christian fortress, and inside that Christian fortress is Christianville, and we're all happy in Christianville, and we're clean, tidy. We're safe for the whole family. We live like a Tide commercial. Everybody's so fresh and so clean, and it's just nice. We're all just so nice, and we smile, and we're just such good smilers. Aren't we doing, isn't this what God wants, this nice, clean, sanitary Christian life? Well, there might be a problem with that. Let me point out something Jesus said here in Matthew 5. You've heard this. He says, "You are the light that gives light to the world. A city that is built on a hill cannot be hidden. And people don't hide a light under a bowl. They put it on a lampstand so the light shines for all the people in the house. In the same way, you should be a light for other people. Live so that they will see the good things you do and will praise your Father in heaven." Let me be truthful with you. Hiding your light for fear of the darkness is a lot of things, but it's the exact opposite of what God has told you to do. So I don't know what you call that. You might have all kinds of super spiritual religious decorations on top of that, but at the end, we're decorating the word disobedience. I don't care what you say. It just is. Here's the deal. If you're a Christian and you don't know anyone else who's not, you need to pop your Christian bubble. You need to break it and get rid of it. Now, here's what people say. No, wait, Matt. Whoa, I was with you till now. Now you got me all worked up. Because here's the deal, Matt. Listen, I'm trying to get better. You need to understand why I've done this. I'm trying to get better. I don't want to be around certain people and environments because when I'm around them, I get sick again. So don't tell me I need to go back to all that because I can't go back to all that. Listen, okay, let me clarify this. We do need to be careful about what influences us. That's true. Does the Bible say that we need to have friends that encourage us to do the right thing and make wise decisions? Absolutely. Can certain people or certain environments be too toxic for you? Sure. If you're an alcoholic, you don't need to be like, well, I'm going to the bar for Jesus. Yeah, okay. I don't know about that, bro. Here's the thing. It's a wise idea to have boundaries so that you make sure you don't fall back into some old struggles. That's truth, okay? I get that. Be wise about the environments in which you are influenced. So on your bulletin, you'll see the word influence. I want you to put a D right by that first one. You do need to be wise about who is influencing you. Where are you influenced? That is true. But I believe in a race to get good influences. I think in a race to try to build something better around you, you could have accidentally shut out anyone that you could influence. Let me just put it to you this way. There's a difference between two groups of people in your life. And if you've never separated these groups, it might explain some of the problems you're facing. There are those who I allow to influence me, and then there are those that I'm here to influence. And a lot of us have the first group, but we somehow shut out the second group. You can't think on one hand, count on one hand how many people are in that second group. The thing is, are there environments where you are an influencer? Put an R by that second one there. Are there environments where you are an influencer? I get you don't want to be, I get you got boundaries. All those things are great. But who are you reaching? Who are you building into? Where does your difference actually make a difference? Some of us, we live in Sameville all the time, but we're around no one that has a different opinion than us, no one that has a different belief system than us. And you got to be an influencer. Here's the question. Look at what Jesus said in Luke 5. So Jesus, let me just set this up. Jesus is hanging out at a dinner, and he's hanging out with scum. We're talking prostitutes, tax collectors. You know, I mean, I say tax collectors, it's in there. I'm not making that up, okay? But he's around a bunch of criminals and thieves, and they're all having dinner, and they're all laughing, and the religious leaders, who remember, not too fond of Jesus, walk by. The disciples are outside, who I believe were a little bit even weirded out by this environment. I think even the disciples were out there going, yeah, I don't know if I can go have dinner right now. I'm just going to sit out here and kind of hang out. He is really comfortable with those folks. So even the religious leaders come to Jesus, and it says this, it says, but the Pharisees and their teachers of religious law complained bitterly to Jesus' disciples, because they're typically pretty bitter about this. Why do you eat and drink with such scum? Jesus hears them. I love what he says. He answers, he goes, well, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I love that answer. That's great that we're around healthy people all the time, but you're called to be the light of the world, and where do doctors need to be? And Jesus is pointing this out, saying, I am in this environment. I'm not here to be influenced. I'm not asking a hooker or a tax collector, hey, honey, what do you think I should do about this? I'm not doing that. He says, I'm in this environment to be an influencer. I'm not here to follow. I am here to lead. And I got to ask you, what environments do you lead? Where are you around people and you say, I'm an influencer. This is why I'm here. Let me speak to teenagers for a second. They hate this part. Let me speak to because some teenagers, you don't know why your parents won't let you hang around certain people. Why don't they get it? Man, I know she's dating a 30-year-old that just got out of jail, but like, they're in love. I don't get why my mom's so weird. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you why your parents are concerned, because in certain environments, listen to me, you are influenced and not an influencer. You've decided to be a chameleon and kind of flow in wherever and follow every room you're in. And I get it, insecurity, it's the whole teenage deal. We get that. But the truth is this, at certain places with certain people, you follow when you should be leading. And if you were to ever get with Jesus and say, listen, I want to be an influencer, I don't want to just be influenced, your parents would worry a lot less about you. This is for all of us. You got to be selective about who influences you, but you need to be strategic about who you're going to influence. We can't shut that part out of our lives. You can have boundaries with people who don't know God, and you're trying not to fall back. I get that. But boundaries and banishment are two different things. We kicked them off the island. And for some of us, we need to reassess and go, listen, I don't know anyone who doesn't believe like I do, and that's not healthy. I'm the light of the world under a bowl in a house, closed up under a shell, in a bubble, and we got to break through all of that. There are people that will find God and experience Jesus Christ if you will literally break your bubble and make sure that there are people in your life that you are actually praying for, actually loving, sharing your story with, that you actually have a relationship with. Jesus said, be innocent in the world, but don't be isolated from it. So, I'll get off of that because some of you are like, woo, jeez. Somebody's on the 21-day fast in a bad mood. Yes, I am. I cry when I see a pizza, but here's the thing. Listen to me. And this really segues into what I'm saying, hunger. Here's the thing. I want you to hear this. I don't want you to be hungry. I don't want you to pray for someone until Easter and then move on with your life. I want you to stay hungry. That's what I want us to do. I'm praying that the light of the world in you doesn't turn on and off like a switch. That you are the light of the world that desperately needs that light. You shouldn't be concerned about staying comfortable. You should be concerned about staying hungry. God, don't let that passion in me. God, disturb me. Bring people to mind. Don't let me go to sleep without thinking and praying for someone who needs you. Hell is a real thing. And the truth is this. You can't stay hungry if you stay hidden. You're going to have a hard time sharing your story to yourself in a bunker. Here's what I'm saying. If you fell asleep or something happened, here's the deal. Don't hide from the people who need to hear your story, but listen. Share your story and show people Jesus. Don't just talk about him. Be him to that person. Grace does a lot in the heart and the mind of a person. There used to be a commercial where the most interesting man in the world would look at the camera and say, "Stay thirsty, my friends." Some of you are like, "I can't believe you referenced that." Hold on. My friends, I am not the most interesting man in the world. And I don't really care how thirsty you are. But stay hungry. Don't let your light dim. You are here to be an influencer, and you only have a limited time to do that. Keep praying for people. Keep loving people who need love. Keep showing grace to people who don't understand. Don't stop sharing your story. Be the light, because you have no idea what God will do through you. He will do more than you can ever imagine in the hearts and the minds of people if you just have the courage to be Jesus. Share your story and don't hide. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our campus pastor so they can close the service.